All right, we can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna let Clay be our first speaker here and update us on shows that we have going on. I'm talking right into the mic. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey, how are you doing tonight? Everybody okay? Good. Yeah, happy to be here. It's next weekend is daylight savings time, and it'll just all seem different, won't it? Yeah, did I say this weekend? No, I said next weekend. Yeah. Well, that was last week. Verlin is not here. I wanted to just remind you to start thinking about the two shows that we have. We have the West Pecan Beer and Coffee, or Coffee and Beer show. That's on in Pflugerville. That's a very small show, and the hardest thing we have to do is pick out 12 pictures. It's only enough room for 12 hangings. That's what we've done in the past. The much larger show that I'm sure everybody can participate in is the Pflugerville Library Show that is, we'll be hanging the show, I think it's around May 15th, and it goes through June. It's a month. And we have a procedure where it's handy to have a gallery. Ed, are we setting up a gallery? What we've done in the past is Ed sets up a gallery. We like to preview the pictures, the West Pecan show, especially for 12. Of course, it would be one image per person, and if we have more than 12, which I imagine we will, the leadership will have to figure out a way to do this. But for the Pflugerville Library Show, there's room for at least 60 images. And we'd love to have everybody have at least one print frame for the show, and to start planning on that. The Round Rock Williamson County Annex show will be taken down March 20th, I believe. And that means if you have a picture in that show, think of that as a Pflugerville Library image, unless you want to do new ones, and we'd love to have the new ones. The newest member we've had join is Ken Cinco, and Ken is not here tonight, so we look forward to meeting him. Give it back to Bill.
All right, I'm gonna let Patrick talk about what we have planned for the third Thursdays.
Over here. So, hello, we actually have a schedule. Whoa, we've worked on it. Okay. So, third Thursdays, as I mentioned last month, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, what we'll be doing is we're going to put on workshops on processing and producing images. And the idea is that we theoretically start from the beginning and work our way through to the very end of how to do that, as in the various steps. Well, we got a little bit ahead of ourselves. And so next 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to do output and presentation. So that's actually the final step in everything. But it will be on somebody's somebody's horn is having a good time.
So earlier today, it just started randomly going off.
Functions. Okay.
I was like, I think.
Okay. So we're going to do output and presentation, and it's a discussion of first things like color calibration of your screen and how to get that matched up or as best as possible with printing profiles, so that you can do either your own printer or an outside printer, that kind of a thing. How to basically crop and size and things of that nature. That's what that's going to be.
Right.
So, and then so then we're going to start back at the beginning, kind of. And Bill is going to do digital asset management. In other words, when you he likes big words. Bill just likes big words. Digital asset management. And today we're going to be talking about how to actually download your images, where they go, how to get them around inside Lightroom, and other methods of saving your images off. And Just
We might even talk a little bit about data integrity and fault tolerance.
see. He likes big words. Okay. He doesn't like it when I joke with him about his big words. Okay, so but on that's in April. In May, we have a gentleman coming from the Austin PPA, and he will be discussing the basic topic is creative development, how to shape a raw file into a master image. And so now that we've gotten an idea how to output, we've got an idea of how to manage the images as they come into your system. This gentleman it's not really a how-to, it's more like a feel to. How do you feel about doing this? What's the feeling that you're trying to get out of the image? What did you take? You shot the image and now you've got this thing up on the screen, and what are you going to do with it? How do you create a master image out of this? And that's what this gentleman will be talking about. And then June and July, we're running back to back with technical development. So those are the nuts and bolts of using Lightroom and possibly Photoshop, depending on what our speakers wish to cover. I will be in the output and presentation, we're going to cross over and get a little Photoshop in there. But then in August, it's called Advanced Lightroom Library Module. So, and I bet you can guess who's going to do that. So no, Bill is actually very, very good at managing how and where to get your images placed and everything else. September is a Photoshop Foundations. So we've been doing Lightroom most of the time through this. So Photoshop is going to be one of the last things we do. Yours truly will be doing HDR panoramas and photo stitching, or any kind of photo stitching, focus stacking. So I'll cover 3 different topics rather quickly, but I'll cover those. And then at about that time, maybe even in September, we're going to give a file to everyone. We're thinking a TIFF file, we think, or a PNG. I think it was, no, a DNG file.
Something that everybody's tools can read.
Yeah, so that you're
The
not
usual
looking at,
file format.
yeah, you're not looking at it and go, I shoot Canon and they gave me a Nikon NAPfS file. I mean, how could they do that? Or I shoot Fuji and they sent me a Sony file. You know, no, we're going to send something that's generic, but it's going to have all the data that's possible in it. And then you are everyone has the same image. It's not a competition. It's the same image. We want to see what everybody can do. It's free for all. Have a good time with the image, you know? And then we'll just, if you want to call it a critique, they'll be shown in the November, yeah, maybe the November, more likely at the December Christmas party. Somewhere between November and December, we're going to show it. And everybody gets a chance to look at it. You want to toss a critique out, just remember, you tossed one way, it comes right back, you know? So, but that's the idea for this year. Hopefully everybody will enjoy that. It'll be educational. All of them are going to end up on YouTube, so that they'll always be there. So we have to get dressed and look nice and suck it in. Oh my God, all of those things. We're actually going to try to get all of the presentations in PowerPoint and look all the same, so that it's kind of like, here's the NAPfS presentation format.
That turned out to be a bigger challenge than I anticipated.
Yep. Okay.
Mark's our executive. He's going to help me.
Okay. So, as this progresses, I would love to hear your thoughts on it and see what we can do, because if it's really something that works and you want to continue with it, we can discuss in leadership how we want to handle that for next year. So, but we do have other programs. You're going to talk about the other program?
We have discussed.
Okay. I'm going to leave it at that point. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm out of here.
We've discussed a mentoring process, kind of like APPA has. You can schedule time with anybody you think can help you. about an hour, and we'll spend that time with you. You can schedule more time with other people. APPA has a base charge. They're cash driven. So at some point, we'll figure out what that is, probably 3-4 hours of consulting. We'll ask you to come back and pay your helper probably $25 to $50 an hour. But the intent is that this series that Patrick's described should help us all be much better in our post-processing and our image handling. We have just mentioned a little bit that we might consider image capture for next year's theme. So if people are interested in image capture, we'd like to hear about that. Now I'm going to do the thing that everybody hates to hear. I need at least 4 volunteers for Texas Photo Festival in Georgetown on the 21st.
What do you volunteers?
Basically going to be kind of sweeping up behind the people that have photo walk, just managing the crowd.
There is at least 6 or 8 photo walks.
Yeah,
It's very interesting, very, very nice. And I'm from Georgetown. And those are fantastic. One is with models, some are aimed for black and white photography, other one is for Georgetown in colors, other one is about composition. There are different walks with different, and I would like to go for 2 or 3 of them. So I would love to volunteer, but then I would have to miss those.
we'll find an opportunity for you.
And for sure will volunteer.
Okay,
Is that March?
March 21st, it's a Saturday. It also coincides with Pistons on the Square. And it's sponsored by Dave Valdez. And Dave is just a super nice guy. He's spoken here. He's a presidential photographer. He was George H. Bush's photographer. So it's just a real dream to get to sit and listen to him tell stories. Okay,
Where to be and what to do.
okay. Can you send Ed email and I'll get it from Ed? Just, we'll get in with the email. So I got 2 of you already.
They usually meet at the Austin, I mean, the museum. Usually meet at the
Well,
museum.
we've got some other things to do before we meet. So I'm gonna look for a couple more volunteers. And
I gotta look at my calendar.
so I think that's it from my point of view. I know we don't have any new rambles planned right now. Anything else, Clay, Larry, Cody? It's your show, sir.
Okay, let's do it.
Saturday.
The first walk, I think, is at 9 o'clock. Go ahead, Dave.
Or then for those frames, Golden State Art, I picked up a little 16 by 20s for $105.
Okay.
I mean, it's like $10 a frame. A black frame with mixed grass, about 3/4 inch. I got information here if anybody wants them.
Okay. All right, let's get. Okay, so we'll start with our basic category. So I'll do a quick scan through the images and then we'll get judges to chime in. So you have 11. Okay, so first is, who are you looking at? City Reflections. Serenity. Hands Ready for Work. Escaping the Summer Sun. A Girl and Her Dream. Airborne. Gentle Wings Over Water. bee time in Texas, 3-hour tour, have a seat. Okay. So do the critiques. First up, who are you looking at?
All right, I will talk about this a little bit. I feel that the narrative is slightly unclear here. It appears to be an artist posing with maybe one of their prints. While the lion is bold and a striking element, I'm not sure it should overshadow the person, especially if the lion itself is someone else's work. On a technical note, I think that it worked out well that the lion is in focus and the person is in focus, and the wall seems to go out of focus some. And so I think that is a nice effect. The title doesn't really provide, I feel, the necessary context to tie the person to the photograph. And without that link, it seems like the most prominent part is a photograph that someone else took. So I think that that's something to watch out for if you're taking pictures of other people's art, which maybe that's not the case, but that's what I feel like we're looking at here.
Okay. Next, we have city reflections.
Love the idea of the image. You've got the building and the statue kind of providing interesting architectural points that contrast each other, because you've got straight lines and curved lines, and the lighter building with the darker metal. It's kind of a cool composition there. I definitely suggest that straightening the image, because it is a little bit off, and that's distracting because you really want to focus on the linearness. And since it's such a big part of the composition, you definitely want to make sure you get that straight. Also said that we play more with the angles of the images, possibly pulling it to the left, or pulling in the side over here on the right, because you want the building to be the focus with the reflections, which are beautiful, and then some of the art, but the building next to it around the back probably isn't adding much. So I would make the subject of the composition more to the left and kind of chop that right side off a little bit, maybe take 25% off the right there. Other than that, we really liked the idea of what this person was doing with us.
Okay, next we have Serenity.
And I like the overall composition of this. I liked what they were ultimately going for. I like the color palette with the greens, grays, and the browns. I think they all complement each other and make for real easy viewing. The reflection and the ripples in the water help convey the peaceful feeling the maker was obviously going for. However, I can't find anything in focus in the entire image. I don't know if this was intentional or not. Either way, I would prefer for as much of the scene to be as sharp as possible. I would also personally add some vignetting around the edges to help draw the viewer's focus more toward the peaceful elements in the center. The off level of the fence and walkway in the background is very distracting. And it appears from the metadata that the equipment likely does not have image stabilization. And I noticed what the shutter speed was, and I think it was probably insufficient for the lens if it wasn't stabilized. So I would suggest going for a higher shutter speed, and I would also suggest using a narrower aperture. So probably something like f8, maybe even f11, so they get as much depth of field as possible. And according to my calculations, based on what they had, that would bring their ISO up to no more than 400, which would be perfectly acceptable for the equipment they were using. And I think that they are onto such a good idea here that I urge them not to stop or be dissuaded by a negative review, and ask people for help. We'll be, even myself, be more than happy to help them.
Okay, next we have hands ready for work.
All right, this is a compelling black and white image. I think the monochrome edit works well. However, on this one also, the focus seems a little soft and it seems like it's probably due to shutter speed. This was taken at a 13th of a second. And if you raise the ISO just a couple stops, you could increase the shutter speed to 1/30th of a second. So this was a 28 or 32 millimeter lens. And one of the rules of thumb, maybe not as common now with all the image stabilization, but 1 over the focal length is a good place where you should be able to handhold the picture. And 1/13th of a second, I think, was just a little too low. And then regarding the title, Hands Ready for Work, I think something that could just strengthen this overall with that title would be some sort of clue or tools of the trade of what the work is. That would just make maybe a little bit more of a story for the picture. But overall, I think it's presented very well. Addressing the shutter speed would improve the sharpness probably, and it's a good edit. It's nice.
Okay, next we have Escaping the Summer Sun.
All right, love the storytelling of the image. Starting with the dark tunnel, it really frames the image super well. There's moisture on the walls, so it kind of gives you a sticky feeling, even though you're in the shadows. You definitely get a sense of humidity right out of the gate. And then you're kind of going into the image and you have this just bright sun hitting you. The details are nice. The eye gets taken right down the line of the photo where the people are walking. We liked the highlights on the umbrellas were kind of strong, which just gave you that sort of hot feel. And then the shade underneath the umbrellas, again, gave you that kind of contrast of trying to cool off. And the one thing I noticed was the face on the woman in the front, who seems to be kind of the primary one you're drawn to, is just a touch soft. But we didn't think it was a big deal, just more so feedback for next time. And we also observed there's a van on the far side. There's a little part of a van sticking out. Maybe just eliminate that if you can. But overall, really liked the way this image was set up and taken, and the capture, the detail, and the motion, and just what the people were doing was very good.
Okay, A Girl and Her Dream.
I thought this was a great concept, and this type of shot can be very creative and dynamic. I saw in the metadata that it was shot with a Kenko waterproof camera. Thus, they're out in the water, and it was pretty easy to achieve this type of shot without worrying about wrecking the equipment. And I like the settings used, as they resulted in an overall sharp image with the focus on the girl, and the rest is out of focus for good subject isolation. I really like the details in the water and on the girl from the higher shutter speed, as well as the points of reflection coming off the water. My biggest concern is the horizon almost dead center. Since this was taken with a waterproof camera, I would have gone lower in the water and tilt the lens as low as possible to crop just above the subject's head and include more water than sky. Overall, I like the concept and encourage the maker to keep at it.
Airborne.
I think this composition works really well on multiple levels. The low angle really places the viewer in the arena, so it feels like you're in there with the bull and all the rodeo people. And being a low angle really emphasizes the height of the bull and it being in the air and everything. And this is captured really at a peak of action, where all 4 feet are off the ground. It looks like it's very dynamic. I think that it's really exposed well. The sky in the background is blown out, but I don't think that that's a problem in this case, because everything in the arena, all the stuff that's important, is exposed well. And all that light out behind is, you know, that's the outside, and so I think it really makes sense. And so I think it's really a really interesting and good image.
Okay. Gentle wings over water.
All right, I got this one. Very well executed end to end. We like the detail across the entire bird. It's kind of everywhere you zoom in, it's sharp and crisp, and there's a touch of blur in the wings, but that gives you a little bit of motion. We like the softness of the background. You can see a little bit of detail, but nothing that distracts in any way. So it really kind of draws the eye to the detail of the feathers and the patterns, which is nice. We also like the color choices as well. It adds color to the image, and it was brighter on the computer than it is here. They don't compete with the bird. They complement each other very well. It does a nice job of conveying graceful motion. We thought there were some ripples in the water that also convey a little bit of motion, which just adds a little bit more interest in the background. What might have helped, we thought, was maybe playing a little bit with the cropping, either zooming in on some part of the bird to really bring the detail out, or pulling out a little bit more and giving more context to the scene or what the bird was doing. But that's, you know, not knowing what else is on the edges of the picture that may not have been possible. But overall, very well done. We did like this one.
We'd just like to say one thing, that if the photographer is here afterwards, I'd be curious where this picture of the limpkin was taken. So that's an interesting bird.
Okay, next is bee time in Texas.
Overall, a very nice sharp macro shot of a bee in its environment. I like the overall composition and personally crop in a bit. I found the flowers to be competing too much with the bee and too distracting. I would crop mostly off of the bottom to eliminate as much of the flowers as possible. I would also darken the overall image to pull your eyes up to the bee, and I would also darken the highlights, especially the anthers of the flowers, as they are very distracting. Otherwise, nice work.
3-hour tour.
This is a fun nod. The title is a fun nod to Gilligan's Island, and I see that most of you here are old enough that you got that. Because when they mentioned it, everyone giggled, and so I thought that was cute. The image itself is a bit busy, and due to all the masts from the sailboats and some foreground distractions. So this is something that's just really hard to get a picture that really isolates the subject in this kind of environment. So I don't know if you went down lower, like down to this picnic area, covered dock area, if you could get a picture of your main subject and have it stand out more from some of the other distractions around it. The other thing is you might be able to control the depth of field with aperture, but I think that this one was done with a phone. So I don't think you really have control over aperture, but you might be able to do something. I don't know if portrait mode can work on a subject like this, which will artificially blur the background to maybe just de-emphasize all those masks and stuff, so that you focus more on the main subject. But it's a difficult situation to get pictures in this environment to really focus in on one subject. I think it's good, and I think that the title in particular resonated with everyone.
And have a seat.
Love the idea of the image. The light coming through the trees, I thought was just magical. It's kind of just a really great time to capture it. And the light really does just point down on that bench and invite you to come and sit down. I thought the image created a very strong sense of peace, tranquility, and warmth. The shadows on the trees really frame the outside of the photo, kind of really, I think, effectively drawing your eye towards that bench. So I thought that was well done too. I think the opportunity in this image is mostly around the cropping. I think the image, first of all, needs to be straightened a little bit. Also, I think on the far left, there's that bridge and a building. Not sure that adds anything to the storytelling. And if possible, would almost like to see more on the right side where the water is. Because if you were sitting on the bench and you were looking out onto the water, I think that would tell a better story. So maybe move the image to the far side so the bench is about a third of the way over, and then try to capture more of the water to really kind of make it about the bench and what you would be looking at on the bench, just as a suggestion. But definitely an interesting idea that I think has a lot of promise with a little more work.
Okay, let's move on to judge's choice. Okay, so we have 4 images with, there's a tie in there. So first we have Tim Levin with Bee Time in Texas. Third, like I said, third, seventh. I don't know, is Tim here? Nope. Okay. Then we have a tie for second. So the first is James Hells with Escaping the Summer Sun. Jamie Hells.
Maybe online.
Yeah.
If he wants to unmute. I'll get in touch with him.
Okay. And then the other tie for second is Jerry Murphy with Airborne. See Jerry online. And then first place, Leslie Eag with Gentle Wings Over Water.
That's a limpet. Oh. Limpkin, and it was taken at Cullinan's Park in Sugarland last March. They're beautiful.
Yeah,
Not a lot of color, but they're pretty.
they're sort of more known for Florida, I think.
Yeah.
So, but it's on the,
They like snails, and there's snails all over the place.
interesting.
But there was 4 of them there last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where was it?
It's called Cullinan's Park in Sugarland.
Okay, and then we have People's Choice. So in bronze, we have Tim Levin, Bee Time in Texas. Silver, Jerry Murphy, Airborne. And gold, Gentle Wings Over Water. Okay, we move to intermediate. All right. We'll start with the scan through the images. We have 9. First is Cat Behind the Blinds. Surrounded by Indians. Vital lines, potential woes. Consumed by the magic of light. The Princess of the Tetons. Assassin's Guild. Natural Notation. Watching him become an Iron Man. And Winging It. Okay. Now we'll go through the judges' critiques. We'll start with Cat Behind the Blinds.
There was quite a bit of discussion among the judges over this image. It was mostly received as an artistic twist of a double exposure with the face of the cat overlaid on the image of window blinds. I thought it was a bold attempt at creativity. The colors play especially well, and the green eyes of the cat really are playfully haunting. The tight, small pattern of the blinds I thought was too distracting and busy, and I would have preferred to see larger blinds or maybe bamboo blinds as opposed to the small pattern. And all judges agreed that the image looked much better when it was small, which would have been like viewed from a distance, then up close and large.
Okay, next we have Surrounded by Indians.
Okay, the title works well for this image, being blue bonnets surrounded by the Indian blanket flowers. The composition is pleasing with the complementary feel of the blue sitting opposite the oranges and reds on the color wheel, and the saturation makes all the colors really pop. The telephoto focal length provides a shallow depth of field that keeps the blue bonnet sharply in focus. However, because the Indian blankets are sharp, while in some spots and other spots are blurry, I think that became a little bit distracting. And it was a little hard for me to tell why some were in focus and not, but perhaps a higher f-stop and get more in focus might have worked better in this case. So you didn't have just individual flowers around that were sharp when others were not. It also, I think that, or I felt that the composition is sort of weighted on this side towards me. There's a lot of color on the other side. There's less of the Indian blanket flowers and more green. I think it could be cropped a little bit from that side, and maybe if you could go from a different angle where you could get a more even distribution of the reds and oranges on each side of the blue bonnets. This just feels to me that it's a little heavy on the one side with so much color, but I think that it looks that the idea works really well, and there are just a few components in there that become a little distracting, that could be handled by a slightly different angle and maybe a different aperture to get more depth of field.
Okay, next we have Vital Lines, Potential Woes.
All right, I got this one. Interesting subject with an appropriate title. I like the way that the poles are put on the right third of the image, so the lines stretch outward to the left. We also like the texture and the detail of the clouds as well as the wall. It kind of gives some framing interest around the edges of the photos in different directions to make a more complete composition. We thought the opportunity of this one was around lighting. The image is dark and cool with heavy shadows on the subject, and the suggestion is either to play with the shadows and exposures of the main structure of the poles and the walls, bring them out a little bit more, or try to darken them and do more of a silhouette approach. So it kind of felt like it was a little bit halfway in between. I mean, probably the challenge was not to blow out the sky and still get everything, but there was probably an opportunity maybe to try some bracketed shooting or something to better balance the light across the whole picture, or just commit to doing a silhouette and not worry about it. Other than that, it was definitely interesting, probably not OSHA friendly in any way, but definitely an interesting composition to play with.
Okay, next we have Consumed by the Magic of Light.
While the darker clouds at the top are in contrast to the brighter clouds, I do not feel that they are necessary or add anything to the substance of the image. Including them also pushes the horizon down to the center line of the image. When I cropped to just above the brighter clouds and lost about 10% off the left side, it really turned into a more impactful image. There is not as much happening on the left side as there is on the right. I really like the strength of the reflections across most of the image, and I like how the lines created by the still water and riffles draw my eye farther back into the image. I would have got lower to make the grasp more of the image, increase the aperture to f11 to get more depth of field. The tree lines need to be lightened up and the clouds need to be darkened a little bit. Otherwise, I really like this a lot.
Okay, next we have The Princess of the Tetons.
All right, this is a lovely image of a bear in the field. There's a lot of stuff that's done really nicely here that I want to point out. So the depth of field works well here, that the foreground is out of focus, the background's out of focus, which really draws attention to the bear. I think that the uh, the cool tones in here and the desaturated palette work nicely in this image, and in here not as much, but on a calibrated monitor, there's a neat effect that there's warmer light on the bear's head and right in front of it. And whether that was done that the bear was walking into a spot of light, or whether that was done in post-processing, I think it's an effective that it was effective to have that spot, so it does look like he's walking into the sun. Some other things to mention on this that are just for everyone else taking pictures like this: the bear has a lot of room on this side to walk into, and that's a good thing. You want to have some room for it to go into. And the other thing is that there's enough room at the bottom. You know where the bear's feet should be, but you can't see them. But you don't want to crop a picture in a way that you'd be cropping off the feet that you know would be there. And so those are just some additional things that I think other people that are taking pictures should think about. It's done well here. And then finally, another thing that I noticed here is that along the top, there's some dark stuff that's still left in. And I think that really helps with the storytelling. It seems like dark woods, and that maybe this bear has wandered out from the dark woods into the meadow. And so I think that helps with the storytelling, leaving that dark line of trees or whatever it is in the background, that helps with the storytelling. So I think it works very well and tells a good story.
Okay. Next we have Assassin's Guild.
That one. Very well executed image. The detail across the entire subject is consistent and not overdone. The composition choices in her outfit, expression, props, background, hair, everything works really well together. There's different textures in here that add some interest. You know, it's a very dark photo, but all the textures and the pops of kind of the red and maroon add a lot of interest to the photo in a different way. We also like the moodiness of this in terms of the color choices, which suggests leaving a little more room on the top because her head's a little cropped. We didn't all agree on that, but I kind of just really wish she had a little bit more at the top of her head. And would also slightly, and this was again something we talked about, different opinions, maybe slightly lighten the dark side of her face because the detail was captured so well that, you know, you might be able to still get that moodiness, but see that that detail on the dark side of her face without changing the composition. Otherwise, overall, very well done, and we would not want to meet her in an alley.
Okay, next we have natural notation.
This image is a little bit of a conundrum to me. Part likes it while parts find it busy and confusing. I really like the strong silhouette effect of the different positions of the birds waiting for full dawn to take off. I took one of these while on the photo walk at Guadalupe State Park, and I'm not sure I like any of those either. I think concentrating on a smaller area of birds would be more effective. Keep trying these. I see you have a great idea. You just need to refine it.
Okay, watching him become an Iron Man.
All right, so this is a very powerful moment. It's a nice image of a powerful moment in the middle stages of an Ironman triathlon. The shallow depth of field works well here so that the background is very soft, but the rider is very sharp. And the vibrant colors on the rider stand out really well against the green foliage in the background. Technically, possibly toning down the brightest areas so that you could get a little bit more detail in the shoulder and maybe on the top of the helmet might be something that could improve a little bit. And for the composition, the rider is coming diagonally across the screen, across this direction, and it feels like there's not much room for him to go into. And there's more behind, so I don't know if it could be cropped in a way, if there was some way that could be cropped with more space in front and cut off a little bit of the really dark areas of the trees from behind so that he had more room to go into. Overall, I think that this is a photograph that whoever this is would be really happy to have, because it documents this huge achievement of doing an Ironman. I don't think it's something that many of us do, and it's very impressive.
Okay. And winging it.
I got this one. I did not realize I was judging with two bird nerds. And there was a lot of conversation about this. The red eye and what type it was and where would it be and what is it doing? Apparently it's fluffing its wings, which I didn't know they did. And there was a whole thing with this picture before we even talked about the picture. So very well executed. Now that I'll talk about the non-bird aspects of it. Detail across the face, body, and feathers is impressive. When you see it on the computer, it's just that much crisper, and you can see that like everything is perfect. The colors are rich and well balanced. The capture allows for the full display of the feather textures, color, and variety, which creates a lot of interest. We had a conversation about cropping and storytelling, because the bird is sort of dead center. Was there a way to convey a little bit more about what was going on, or maybe crop in to really show the difference between the different colors and textures in that center section near the head with some of the wings, because it's just so well captured that maybe zooming in there would just enhance that much more. We talked about unanswered questions behind the story behind the image, because there's really nothing beyond the bird in the water. So maybe that would be an opportunity, not knowing what else was going on around it. The red eye is very interesting, and we were wondering if it could subtly be edited to make it stand out just a little bit more, because it does blend in a little bit when you look at it on the computer, and it's such an interesting color that, possibly just a very slight edit there would make it pop without making it look like a zombie. But overall, very well done. And the subject of a lot of discussion.
Okay, let's go to judge's choice. Okay, so we have 4 awards for this. So first, honorable mention is Cat Behind the Blinds, Jim McDaniel. I think so. Okay, in 3rd place, we have Winging It, Roberto White. In 2nd place, we have Assassin's Guild, Vance Strickland. So not here. And in 1st place, we have the Princess of the Tetons, Jonathan Rocher. Also not here. Okay. Then we can go to People's Choice. Okay. Bronze, we have Winging It, Roberta White. Silver, Assassin's Guild, Vance Strickland. And gold, the Princess of the Tetons, Jonathan Rocher. Okay. And now we can move to advanced. All right. Green Shutters and Man with Umbrella. Peaceful. The Ever-Changing Skyline After an Evening Storm. Grubby Tummy. Clockwork Fairy with Spellbook. Mission San Jose. Oscillation. Beauty and the Beast. Caught Between a Thoughtful Rock and a Hard Place. Mud Point Caddo Lake. Show of Life in the Rugged. Contrast in the Fog. All right. First up, Green Shutters and Man with Umbrella.
There are so many different feelings I get while viewing this image, and there are so many different textures and surfaces that make me want to keep looking for more. I do not mind the large amount of stark sky around the lighthouse, as I feel it lends to the feel of the image. The crackled paint, rusty stains, and rugged jetty leading to the lighthouse speak to the conditions this structure has endured for many years. Yet the top of the light structure is shiny like it was made yesterday. The seagull, while small, adds to the impact, as does the man with the umbrella hiding from the weather. Some say the newer aluminum gangway is out of place. I do not. It just speaks to the evolving times and the passage of time in this unique location.
Okay. Peaceful.
Okay, this is a very effective use of black and white to emphasize the textures in the face and the mane of this male lion. The detail is impressively sharp. Every hair and whisker and scar is visible, while the background really remains buttery smooth. By shooting at eye level, you place the viewer at in the same plane as the subject, which is a good way to get these images. Makes it more of a connection. As far as the edit goes, the image feels a bit heavy in the midtones to me. And I don't know whether this will help, but maybe experimenting with increasing contrast to create a bolder look, or adjusting the shadows on the histogram to make the lion's features pop against the background. I just feel like when I was looking at it, that it blends to the background pretty much because they're sort of at the same tonal ranges. Let's see. I think the tight crop works well in this case because we don't really need to see the back of the head or whatever, around the rest of the mane, because you know what's there. And that the focus is really on all this texture and detail in the animal. And so overall, I think it's a very striking image. And again, this one has the empty space in front of the lion, so he has something to look into. It's not cropped too close, and so I think that works really well. But being cropped close on the head, I think works well also because we just don't need that other information, that you saw the back of his head or something, because we know what we're looking at. So I think that the crop on this works well.
Okay. The Ever-Changing Skyline After an Evening Storm.
All right, like the idea of the image, the buildings with the cranes in multiple directions convey a dynamic growth orientation to the view. Because you've got the horizontal crane, you've got the vertical crane. It definitely gives you a sense of activity and vibrancy in the city. The reflections on the building bring out beautiful colors in a variety of shades. The architecture is unique and eye-catching. The biggest opportunity overall, in my opinion, was the color, the tone, and the intensity. The image has a dark purplish hue across of it, to the point that the sky competes for a lot of the attention with the buildings themselves. Would suggest toning down the saturation and vibrance and balancing out the color tones to soften the sky. And then that might create better contrast between the hard lines of the buildings and the clouds in the softer part of the sky. Also possibly a cropping opportunity on the left side we talked about to bring the tallest building more to the center and better balance the space around it to more focus on the subject. It felt a little bit heavy on the right side. But overall, we loved the complexity of the lines and the shapes and the colors captured on the building. So definitely a very interesting image.
Okay, next is Grubby Tummy.
A very nice picture of a chinstrap penguin. It looks relatively sharp, as do the rocks it's standing on. And I realize from vast experience that the subject of wildlife is really a case of what you get is based on what's available at the time. With that said, and all the common portrait pictures I have amassed of different species, the thing that makes standout wildlife shots are great action or unique captures. With that, I don't have anything else to add.
Okay. Next, we have Clockwork Fairy with Spellbook.
All right, this is a very creative fantasy scene. I think that the warm color grading effectively captures the atmosphere of working by firelight, perhaps. The coppery colored frames with the gears create a unique wing shape, but the angle makes it slightly difficult to believe that the wings are attached to the fairy in this case. In addition, the highlights on the wing membranes are a bit confusing to me because I don't understand where the light source would be. I feel like we're looking from maybe a fireplace over here, candlelight or something, and a stormy night outside, or a nighttime situation. But those bright lights are a little confusing to me for how they would fit in. And so that sort of breaks the illusion slightly. In the foreground, there's a single bottle that's out of focus. And I think that with one, it's a little distracting, but I think that if you could have had more of those going across, then you'd have this feel that you're hiding behind a shelf with these vials and witnessing, some secret magical stuff. So I think that if you could have had more bottles like that across there, that would actually increase the storytelling on this. Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting one, and in particular the color grading really helps with the story that you're trying to show.
Okay, next we have Mission San Jose.
All right, I thought this one was a great capture of the front of the mission in particular. Very well done. The mission overall, the building is positioned well with equal space on either side. We like the walls going off the right and the left, sort of evenly proportioned on the side as well, to really kind of give you the perspective of how the building sits. The color of the sky and the stone balance well together. We like the framing with the branches along the top too. The detail is focused, crisp, and clear. The removal of distractions is deliberate and well done. Don't know if this was taken when we did our photo walk, but there were some very ugly plastic bags. There were plants in the front. So if somebody took that, then nice job getting rid of all of those. The opportunity we thought was in relation to the lighting. The front of the church looks like it's been lightened to the point where it's inconsistent with the shadows and the color of the things around it. You would expect it to be a little bit more shaded based on where it looks like the direction of the light is coming from the side. So I know when we were there just after lunch, there was a lot of shadow on the front of the mission, and maybe it was an attempt to address that, but probably just a slightly lighter touch on that.
Okay. Next is oscillation.
What a thought-provoking, intriguing image. I really like the monochrome palette with the different shades of gray of the bridge and the water at the bottom of the image against the inky black of the water in the shadows. The patterns or oscillations hold my interest and eventually draw my eyes up to the arched bridge decking. I find the stacking pattern of the bridge quite intriguing. It has its own level of interest, which could have possibly been part of the creator's interest in this picture. The patterns of texture in the bridge just keeps me just as interested as the patterns in the dark water. Great job, great image.
Okay. Next. Next is Beauty and the Beast. Oh,
Are those, yeah. Okay, I can start talking about it, but is this something that's on your screen that you
no.
can remove?
See if I can drag it.
If you just hit the X, just close those, I think. Okay.
Okay.
When you think of Beauty and the Beast, the tiny fly doesn't usually come to mind, but in macro photography, the smallest creatures can appear truly massive. And here you have the beast of a fly on the beautiful flower. The depth of field works, is done well here so that you've got the main flower and the fly is in focus. You can see all the hairs on the fly and whatnot. But you still have a blur of some of the other flowers and buds and stuff that are further away in the grass in the background. Which still gives you some environmental context to this. One thing that I thought that might be helpful in this case is if maybe used a 4x5 crop and cropped off some of the dark areas on the far side, and then you would be able to frame the main area, the fly and the flower, between these two blades of grass, which are already there on each side. But if you bring it in so that you cut into this other blade of grass on the other side, then that would really act as a frame, helping keep all of the attention to the center. I'm not sure that the black area or the very dark area at the far end is adding much to it. But I think that this is a very good title for this image. And even though once you start doing stuff with macro, then you start getting stuff like this. And so it's very interesting to see too.
Okay, caught between a thoughtful rock and a hard place.
So thought the title was very clever. There is a face in the rock on the right side, which I didn't see right away, which also kind of adds to the humor of it. The black and white approach we thought was a very good choice here because it really draws you out of the texture and the contrasting elements of the rock. You see all the lines and the spots and the sharp corners and stuff that I think might have gotten missed if you had more color in there. The picture is very well edited. The focus is right on. We liked the wavy faces coming together with a single rock balanced in the middle because it adds kind of interest and composition. We thought the biggest opportunity on this one, because it is technically very solid, would be around the storytelling. You kind of wonder where the rock came from. There are a bunch of rocks sitting up at the bottom and a bunch sitting at the top. And did this particular one get stuck? Or, is there more to tell, to bring a little bit more of a story to it on how the rock may have gotten there? But overall, a very nice image, and it was certainly eye-catching.
Okay, Mud Point Caddo Lake.
What a super image from the sharp boat operator who happens to be looking at the photographer with an implied intensity that's hidden by the sunglasses, to the capture of the speed of the boat frozen in time from the 1/8,000th shutter speed. The operator is positioned right on the left vertical third line, and the bow of the boat is right on the right 1/3 vertical line. The highlighted points are simply on the boat operator and the spray behind the boat. And part of me would like to see the top of the cresting water from the boat's wake against the side of the boat lit up as well. Other than that, it's an outstanding job.
Next is show of life in the rugged.
All right, so I'm assuming that the show of life is I think a small line of seagulls flying through the rugged peaks. I think that the tight crop on this is actually really effective. There's no need to have the sky having it cropped so that it's just this steep slopes with the birds flying through, I think works really well. I think that the haze and the cool tones of the background really give depth, sort of an atmospheric perspective of depth in the image, and I think that works well. I feel that my eyes were being drawn over to this rock face here where it was sort of lighter and away from the birds in some cases. And in the way that I was looking at this on the monitor, it seemed like the birds are sort of light and blend into the background some. And that maybe darkening the background would help the birds stand out. But then I was just at the Jester show and I saw this picture. And in print, it looked better than it did on the screen as far as that the birds stood out, because when it was printed, then the background did appear a little darker, and that helped. So the difference between printing and what's shown on the screen sometimes can make a difference. And then, of course, this screen is super bright. So this is one of the worst ways to show this image. So I think the image works really well. The stuff that I was talking about that could be an improvement when it's printed, they are. So anyway, that's what I was saying about this one.
Okay. Then we have contrast in the fog.
So this is an image that the more you look at it, the more it draws you in. You initially see the white at the top and the squares and the triangles and kind of the initial recognition of all the shapes, and the black and white. But then you start to notice that the fog's creating a softness around all of that, which really kind of balances the straight, very angular lines up top, and then the red building with a softness that balances it very well. The white paint creates a nice contrast with the dark sky and the deep shadows. The red of the brick creates a richness without too much competition to the rest of the composition. And the black rail really kind of adds some detail down at that bottom corner that otherwise might be dominated by too much of the red face. So there's kind of a lot more going on here than you originally notice when you first look at it, in a good way. And it really is kind of limited to about 3 colors, which play well across the entire image. We talked about maybe cropping in a little bit more to add a little bit more space on the top, to balance out the very dark on the bottom, kind of create a little free space up on the top. Because it did feel a little tight on the top in comparison to the bottom. But overall, a very solid image.
Okay. Go to judge's choice. Okay. We've got 4. So honorable mention, Beauty and the Beast, Shelton Malazar. Say something, Shelton.
Thank you very much.
How long did it take me to get this? I wasn't actually trying to get this fly. These are milkweeds, and it was covered in bees actually. And I was trying to capture bees in flight from one to another. And this fly just decided to sit quietly there. And I said, well, might as well take a photo of it. It was there.
Nice. Okay, and third, we have Peaceful, Cheryl Callan. Say something.
Oh, thanks. I don't know what to say. I was in Africa, South Africa. This guy was just sitting there. Unfortunately, the reason I went black and white was because his color matched the background. He was sitting in dirt. So that was kind of hard. Everything was brown. So that's why I went with black and white. And I originally went with a very soft, like almost no black point at all, because that's what I thought was gorgeous. It just made him, I don't know, just made it look really nice. But for the competition, I made a black point.
Okay. In second place is Oscillation. That's mine. So thank you. Yeah, so I took this at the SMU campus in Dallas. I was just walking around, killing a few hours. My daughter was at a clinic for twirling, and it was this art installation thing they had done where it was like I forgot what it was called, but it was like a waveform, and it was this really big thing, and it was really hard to figure out how to capture it quite right. And so I have a bunch of different photos of it, but I kind of like this one that was more tighter in. And then, yeah, I just thought I went black and white, and then I didn't like black and white. So I've never done it before, but I went with kind of this more blue monochrome thing. And I don't know, I thought it worked out well. So thank you. All right. And then in first place, Mud Point Caddo Lake, Dennis Bosserman.
Well, this is another picture taken on my kayak trip on Cottle Lake. And it's kind of tricky because you're sitting out there in a kayak and the boats are coming by you all the time. But this was taken really late in the evening. The sun was just going down and very bright. And I was actually at this guy drove into the Mud Point. I guess it's a resort there. And I guess he's a guide there or something. But anyway, I was in his spot and he was looking at me like, what are you doing there? But anyway,
So I just,
and I just saw him coming, so I had to get my camera out real quick, and I had it set for other speeds and all that. So it was a difficult shot, and I was trying to pan with him, and it turned out okay.
Nice.
So you pull into his spot, so he would look at you, you get that shot.
What's that?
You deliberately pull into his spot, so he would look at you and you would get that shot.
Yeah, I just happened to be there. You know, right place at the right time.
Okay. And then we can do People's Choice. Okay, we have 3. So bronze is Green Shutters and Man with Umbrella. Ty?
This was when I was in Maine and I was driving around to different places and I took pictures of lots of different lighthouses. And so this one is about a mile walk on the jetty to get out to this house that's at the end. And it was raining and I just thought it worked out well with this guy that was ahead of us that with the umbrella, that it had sort of an art look to it. And I happened to have the seagull on the top and everything. So thanks.
Nice. Okay, and then silver is Cheryl with Peaceful. And gold is Oscillation. Thank you. Okay, that's it. So don't forget to submit images for the next competition. It's backlight. I think John sent out a reminder. I forgot the date to submit it, but you got a few weeks, but don't forget that. And I think we've already got judges signed up. So John's been on top of that. So thanks to John. So
one thing that we might want to talk about is watermarks.
Oh,
There was a discussion about watermarks on pictures and that we really shouldn't have watermarks on the pictures. I think that was what instigated the email that went out recently. And then also some stuff, I don't know what the details are about metadata, but when the metadata shows that the picture was taken more than 2 years ago, that's an issue. And we've had that happen, that pictures are submitted that are outside the sort of the legal limit. And so that's something else to just pay attention to and look at. The first time, I think that the way it's being dealt with is you get a warning.
Yeah, we'll try to contact you, and in this case we did, but we didn't hear from that person. So I think we said, well, we'll give it a pass this time, but afterwards we'll disqualify. And the same with watermarks, right? We'll disqualify in the future.
Yeah, I don't know, but those are things that are part of the rules that we do, and we just aren't. There was a lot of discussion about how that should be dealt with, and so for the future, just be aware of it.
We updated the submission page. I think it's live,
The
right?
submission page was updated a few days ago, it looked like.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm just mentioning it.
There may be some more updates to competition rules. None of them should be a real surprise to you. There's both the capture date watermarks. There's also image size. I haven't looked at sizes recently on images, but I think the website's pretty clear about sizing your image for competition. Everything's presented on a HD TV format, which is 16:9, and your image needs to fit within that structure. Now, lesser images like the one that's on the screen there is not as wide, that's just fine. But you shouldn't have something that has to be cropped down to fit on the screen. Anybody else got input for tonight? Thank you for coming. Thank you, judges. Thank you, Cody. Nice job.